Um, well, personally, I guess I would say that if he's already ill, like, and if there's like he's to the point of like no return, like, then that would help. It would, as long as it would like, it would like save the other crew members. I guess that's what I would do.
Alright, first off, why save one life when you can save many? It was the boy's fault for drinking the salt water knowing that it would make him sick. Okay? That's kind of like sailing 101. Don't drink the fucking water. Also, if I am a captain, I care about my crew and how many people make it back alive. I'd rather have at least 3 people make it back alive than no one make it back alive.
I would put the kid in a different area and not eat him. And I would just try to help him out as much as possible to hopefully keep him alive.
And why would you do that?
Because it's a boy. He has a life to live, and it's not fair for us to play God or choose who lives and who dies. Even if he's ill, I mean, he still has a chance to survive.
Okay, so I would look at it, in those instances, I guess I would look at it from like a physics version of it, all right? Try to remove the humanity, so I'm making a more logical rather than moral decision. Morally, you should do everything you can to keep the boy alive and maybe even all die together, but that's not what I would do. So I would look at it as an entropic pursuit, that there's X amount of energy that exists within all the people who are partaking in this unfortunate series of events. If the boy is unconscious, and by his own account, if you want to add that moral, thing into it, I suppose you could. But for me, you would need all the resources possible to keep yourself alive. And so I guess it becomes a question of, do you see, is it morally responsible to keep others alive other than yourself? And with that question, I would say the boy gave you an easy out by being selfish and doing something that he wasn't supposed to, that further endangered them. But also, people make poor mistakes. But at that point, I would feel fairly relieved of my conscience of the boy. As far as eating him to sustain life, I would imagine at that point, much like pregnant women drink, laundry detergents or eat cigarette ash, right? There are things that your body will crave out of necessity, where you might consume something that you normally wouldn't. So I don't think that the act of actually eating a person has anything to do with morality. I think that is 100% animalistic. I think that you would probably even likely, in accounts that I've read of like the famous movie of the plane crash and stuff like that, there is a conscious thought that goes into it and stuff like that, but at some point I would imagine just having meat readily available in starvation, you may even black out and come to realize that you've eaten a person or something like that. So I guess what I would have done is tried to keep the boy as long as possible, but as soon as his hindrance became life-threatening to all of us, where we're having to expend our energy, our resources, and everything else to keep alive an unconscious person, and it looks like there's no way that the 3 of us are going to be able to, or the 4 of us are going to be able to survive. I would think at that point things would just kind of kick in. So if I was the judge and I was having to make a judgment on whether or not they prematurely killed the young man, I mean, I guess I would have to say that I wouldn't be in a position to do that. I would look at it as incredibly awful and unfortunate and terrible. Maybe I'm a little bit more empathetic, which is funny because I'm trying to come from a pure logical standpoint, but I would think that the horrors of having consumed a young person out of desperation would be enough punishment. I don't think you would need to further those actions at that point. Now, if it was Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy or something like that, I might feel differently about it, right? They probably did jump to the conclusion to eat the boy before they were supposed to. But under normal circumstances with, those types of things, I would think that that's just kind of what would happen. We have to, forego at some point our desires to be moral and, go with a more preternatural sense of survival.
That's a hard one because they did kill him, and like I mean that's not like. If I were the judge, I guess. Okay, I guess I would punish them because like by like law, like they still killed him, but like I would be easier on them because like it was necessary for them. Otherwise, like they all could have died. But I would still give them a punishment. I just don't know if it would be like.
Do you think
like,
they'd serve like
life.
jail time?
Yeah, probably. But not like as extensive as like life in prison or like the death
Okay.
penalty for it.
Gotcha.
I would rule innocent because they didn't know when they were going to be saved. They didn't know if they were going to be saved. You know, they did what most people would do, you know. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And when you're put in that situation, you don't really have any other choice. And yeah, they were saved day 24, but what if they weren't? What if they were saved day 60? And that was their only way of surviving.
I would rule them guilty for, I mean, I would assume it's manslaughter.
Well, in the case of the scenario where they were rescued by day 24 and they killed him off on day 20, I feel like that was, well, definitely a hard decision for them to make probably, but I mean, if reflecting back on the scenario now, like I guess I don't think it outweighs like the benefit if he could have like maybe lasted 4 more days because like I don't know. I feel like 4 days is like a short enough amount of time that I mean maybe he could have survived. Maybe they all could have survived.
If I was the captain, then the benefits highly outweigh the costs because in the end, we're all selfish. We all care about ourselves and basically only ourselves. So his life saved my life. I was able to go back to my family. I was able to go see my kids or my parents, and that outweighs me dying and knowing that the people I love are in pain, as well as, you know, several others who are in pain rather than just one family.
No,
Why?
because, I mean, the benefits are you could potentially survive, but you don't know if you're really going to survive off eating human meat. And the costs are you are taking a human life.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the price that you put on human life. You know, if you value the boy more because he's young and possibly has a greater number of years ahead of him, then perhaps, you know, you're doing a disservice or whatever to choose that young man or whatever of the people to eat. Maybe they should have consumed the oldest person because they're not going to be around as long, but I would also imagine that as the captain, you would probably have the most knowledge to be able to keep people alive in that, so you would also be depleting maybe your most valuable resource of being able to get out of stuff. So, yeah. What was it again? I'm sorry, I kind of lost myself there.
Do the benefits of killing the cabin boy outweigh the costs in general?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't think people really make those decisions. I think those decisions are made from natural occurrences. You know, much like if you throw a child and, you know, an infant into the deep end of a pool and they swim and things like that. You know, that kid didn't make a decision to swim, right? It's a natural reflex of humanity. I think along those lines, I've been in situations that are strenuous in times of war and things like that, and you know, when you train for, you know, nobody can train to go to war, right? Except maybe if you grew up in a really bad neighborhood, but overwhelmingly you're not going to be able to train for it. Instead, you're given all this different training, and then when these things happen, you respond without thinking, because nobody's really good at thinking in those instances. You kind of respond to training and stuff like that. But those are all predicated upon, you know, kind of natural senses and abilities. So I would think at some point the likelihood that the counterbalance of keeping him alive versus him now impeding upon all of our existence and the rest of us being able to stay alive, I would think that we kind of come to a natural understanding of when that is, and that's when we really have to make the tough decisions.
unconscious, maybe not. But I mean, if he was like he like just died, I mean maybe then. But like if he's just unconscious but still living, then I would guess I would say no.
Is it morally acceptable? That depends. On one side, you have people who are saying, no, you just took someone's life. On the other side, you're saying that you did what you had to do to survive. But, you know, you don't know what you're going to do in that situation until you're actually put in it. And why let others decide what's morally right and wrong when they have not experienced what you have experienced?
No.
And why?
I mean, he doesn't have a right to say if he wants to die. It would be completely different if he said he was willing and wanted them to eat him, but he doesn't have a say.
I guess it depends on who is your moral, benevolence or whatever. Who is, what is your understanding of morality? I guess it would depend upon your culture. I mean, certainly in Western culture, particularly in the major religions, eating human flesh is very much looked upon. Self-sacrifice is very much deitized and seen as a transcendent, way to get into heaven or the afterlife or whatever else. So, from a morality standpoint, if we're talking about cultural, religious understandings of morality, there is probably no moral time for you to eat another human being. But that being said, there's also no moral time to strike your parents. But, if your dad's beating you to near death, I imagine you can fight back and the Lord will forgive you, right? But that's not exactly what morality would tell us. It's also not moral to masturbate or these other forms of humanity that we pretend don't really exist. So when morality comes up to life or death, this is when things become very, very, it becomes on the judgment of the morality of the culture. So in this case, the judge, if we're talking about something in a very strict Orthodox Jewish community or something like that, there may be a completely different understanding. So you as the individual, what you perceive as morality, I guess, would be the determining factor there. For me, the kid's getting eaten.
I feel like it's not as simple as just counting the lives in that, or like, I mean, in that scenario, like a lot more had to be like taken into account other than just like, well, I guess like 2 people survive versus like maybe all 3 of them dying. Like I feel like it's a lot more extensive than that. So I would say the second case for what your question was.
Well, this goes back to my first answer. Why save one person? Because they're human rights. Because it's morally wrong to kill them. When you do what's morally unacceptable and save many, you hurt less people. You save lives in the process, and yeah, you'll feel guilty about it probably for the rest of your life, but that guilt is worth being able to see your family and saving lives.
I believe that we as humans should help each other out no matter what. And it's not about weighing lives. It's not about saying who deserves to live, who deserves to die, and how that happens. I think we should all be helping each other and looking out for each other in general.
Yeah, I mean that's the quandary, right? Is who's more valuable, the wise with the knowledge or the youth with the amount of life that's in front of them, right? And so if you're, again, it would come down to what your culture values and what they see. Americans, we tend to really value innocent life, right? We're optimistic. We look to the future. So the death of a child is the death of infinite possibilities, right? They're all doctors and astronauts and everything else. But the opposite is really true, right? The death of an older person is a death of 60, 70 years of collective readings and knowledge and experiences and magnificent wealth of information. And so in cultures where your elders are revered, let's say, in a lot of Asian cultures or something along those lines, the answer is probably different, right? You know, a younger life is less valuable if you're looking towards ancestral worship and, you know, deitizing elderly and, you know, and not that knowledge base. But if your hope springs eternal for youth and the better future and what happens, then I guess that really becomes kind of the differential there.